Good day, everyone. This is a pre-recorded lesson discussion in the subject Introduction to World Religions and Belief Systems. For this discussion, I'm going to tackle the topic Introduction to Shinto. So before I'm going to discuss the lesson proper of this topic, I'm going to present first the lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to present a brief historical background of Shinto, narrate the creation story according to the Kojiki, and discuss the core teaching of Shinto to worship the ancestors and forces of nature to achieve harmony in all dimensions. So let's begin with the origins and growth of Shinto. Most Japanese are followers of Shinto, an indigenous religious tradition. To speak about Shinto as a religion is to make a clear statement that it is entirely of Japanese origin. Shinto shares similarities with other Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. So when we say Shinto, it is exclusively associated with the Japanese. When we talk about its origin, it started from the Japanese. But it also shares the same features with other Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Shinto and Judaism share similar features in terms of orientation and character. Example, Shinto and Judaism are known to be ethnic in nature. So there's similarity between Shinto and Judaism in terms of the association of their ethnicity. Say Shinto, it is associated with the ethnicity of Japanese. In Judaism, it is associated with the Jews. So in terms of ethnicity, they have similarities. Shinto can also be likened to Judaism such that the former is not a missionary religion. It does not seek to convert people. Shintoism is old as Japan, and hence it is an indigenous religion that emphasizes the role of the spirit. So Shinto is also the same with Judaism in terms of um, its influence to other people. These two religions are not missionary in nature, which means that they're not particular with converting other people to be adherents of their religion. So, originally, Shintoism is as old as Japan. So, it also associated with the beliefs in spirits. Shintoists are those born Japanese. One becomes a member of Shinto through blood, not through conversion. This means that a person who is born Japanese is automatically a Shintoist. So Shintoists or the adherents of Shintoism are Japanese born. If you are born as Japanese, it means that you are automatically a Shintoist. Before World War II erupted, every loyal Japanese citizen was practicing Shinto. But during and after the war, the Japanese started to exclude themselves from any affiliation with Shinto. Um, this is probably because of the upheavals, because of the war happened during the time, and probably they believe that their ancestors or the spirits that they worship did not protect them or did not do something in order to shield them from the wars that they experienced during that time. The Japanese people, except for a few which comprise about 10% of the population, are not comfortable being labeled religious. This is because for them, being religious implies a certain religion, shukyo or dogma. They do not want to be branded as dogmatic, so they avoid being called religious in that sense. So they are uncomfortable with the term being religious. That's why they don't want to be associated with the dogma or the religious beliefs being attached to Shinto. Moreover, they feel uncomfortable with the connotation linked to being religious. This is ironic. It's because Japanese are very particular with practicing their religious beliefs, but they don't want to be called religious. So it's kind of ironic for them. Other than being an ethnic and indigenous religion, Shinto is also described as an action-centered religion. Compared to other world religions and Semitic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which have a set of defined doctrines, Shinto has no definite doctrines, set of beliefs, or articles of faith to follow. Okay, this is the unique feature of Shinto. Although they have beliefs, but they do not have clearly defined set of doctrines that they're going to follow. Unlike with other religions, that they have the sacred scriptures or sacred texts and that contain the religious doctrines that they adhere, but in Shinto it's different. The only goal of Shintoism is to allow people to make contact with the kami, or the spirit, through rituals and celebrations. It has no teachings or dogmas. The kami is invoked with elaborate rituals such as house blessings, the beginning of sports fest, etc. So the the central belief in Shintoism is just to make contact or worship their with the kami or the spirits. So these spirits help them to engage or conduct events, rituals, festivals, but they have no teachings or dogmas, like they don't have specific doctrines that they need to follow. Being a Shintoist is not a matter of personal choice or deliberate decision one has to make. Instead, it is something deeper. Essentially, being Shintoist is being Japanese. So when we say if you're Japanese, it also means that you are also a Shintoist. So when you are born as Japanese, it means that you become automatically a Shintoist. Like Hinduism, Shinto has no historical founder. Its beginnings lie deep in the prehistoric practices of the Japanese people. Because one is a Shintoist by birth, there is no need for rituals of conversion or membership. So, Shinto has the same origin with Hinduism. It means that both Hinduism and Shinto have no definite or exact date when did these two religions establish. So um, Shinto can be traced back during the prehistoric time. That's why meron yung there's a story about the creation or the Kojiki. So since when you're born as Japanese, you'll become automatically a Shintoist, then there's no need to perform any rituals or ceremonies in order for you to become a full-fledged member of the religion. In contrast to Christianity and other Western religions, Shinto has no sacred canon or scripture where one can base his or her religious conduct. However, Shinto has sacred books. Unlike Buddhism and Hinduism, Shinto has no moral teachings codified in a text. it has instead a moral system embedded in its rituals. So, in contrast to other religions, Shinto has no sacred texts or sacred books that they need to follow that contains religious conduct or religious doctrines. Although they have sacred books, but it, these books do not contain their religious conduct or doctrines that they should follow because their moral system is associated in their rituals. Unlike other indigenous religions in the West, Shinto has been able to preserve its existence. Among the reasons behind this survival, despite Western influence in Japan's high degree of technological modernization, is that Shinto remains invincible and invulnerable to Western methods of analysis. So even though um, Western culture have huge influence to other countries, especially in Asian countries, but the Japanese were able to preserve their own culture. In Shinto, the concept of divinity does not refer to the transcendental being, but is described to be animistic and naturalistic. So, in Shinto, it has similarities with the pre-colonial religion here in the Philippines, in animism. They believe in spirits. They believe that spirits um, inhibit in nature. So unlike in Hinduism, Buddhism, Shinto do not believe in transcendental beings. Like you need to meditate in order to be one with the supreme being. That's transcendental meditation. But in Shinto, it's different. They believe in spirits, and these spirits dwell in nature. Shinto or Kami no Michi as one tradition. The Japanese term Shinto has corresponding Chinese characters, namely Shen and Dao. These can be read in Japanese as Kami no Michi, which means the way of the Kami. It implies divine worship of deities. So they're very particular with worshiping their deities or their spirits, which are called as the Kami. Kami in Japanese can be taken as both singular and plural. It refers to the countless Japanese deities, including the sun goddess Amaterasu, from whom the imperial family was said to have descended. There are a lot of spirits or kami in Shintoism, since dead ancestors are considered as deities. When they die, their spirits uh, will be with the kami or with the deities. Kami can also be an attribute to the great souls of warriors, poets, and leaders, ancestral divinities of clans or uji, spirits of places of great natural beauty such as woods, springs, trees, rocks, and mountains, and other abstract forces of nature like fertility, production, and growth. So they're very particular with worship of deities, and they go to the shrines or what we call jinja. They also have sacred objects or gushintai, and these spirits dwell on these objects. Nasa shrines, nasa sacred objects, nature. Unlike other religions, Shinto has diverse forms. There are at least six main forms, namely the Imperial Shinto, State or National Shinto, Shrine Shinto, Sectarian Shinto, Shamanic or Folk Shinto, and Dual Shinto. For Imperial Shinto or Kushitsu Shinto. The Imperial Shinto is divided into two types. The first kind has survived to this day in the form of special Shinto practices in the three shrines found at the Imperial Palace. So these shrines are used during imperial funerals, weddings, and other secret rituals. The public can get a glimpse of these activities. The other kind is political in character, wherein religion and politics are one. There is no separation between the two in Japanese culture. The emperor used to be regarded as divine. So the divinity of the emperor implies the role of a high priest for the entire nation. But after World War II, this type of imperial Shinto was dissolved because of its obvious tension and overlapping with the state Shinto. Next is the state Shinto or Kokashintu. The state Shinto is also known as the national faith of Japan. This form of Shinto was caused by religious and political motives. The shoguns or military commanders of the feudal period during 1185 to 1868 had led to the integration of Shinto and Buddhism. So there's other Eastern religions such as Buddhism have influence in Shinto belief. In 1869, Shinto became the state religion but was eventually redefined as purely Japanese patriotism. So state Shinto was associated with supranationalism, imperialism, and militarism. So Shinto has also influence in their political system. In 1869, Shinto became the state religion, but was eventually redefined as purely Japanese patriotism, as what I have mentioned earlier. So have Shinto has influence in their political system, in their government, in their uh, the system that the Japanese people adhere to. Next is the Shrine Shinto. Shrine Shinto or Jinja Shinto is one of the oldest forms of Shintoist expression. Its beginnings can be traced way back before Japanese written history. Two of the oldest shrines in Japan are the Isle Grand Shrine and Chibaki Grand Shrine, which are over 2,000 years old, or the Ise Grand Shrine and Chibaki Grand Shrine. As a place of worship, it is believed that the kami descended and stayed in shrines to receive people's offerings and praise, after which they returned to their origin. So, some other Shinto shrines have existed for at least 1,500 years. So, that's how old Shintoism is. Shrines do not house the kami, but the gushintai or the symbols of the kami. So, although quite vague, what is important in Shinto is not speculation, but practice. So Shinto prefers effective rituals and simple religious experiences rather than conjectures and speculations on mysterious deities or spirits. Today, the Jinja Hunshu, or Association of Shinto Shrines, oversees about 80,000 shrines throughout Japan, and there are thousands more shrines in other places around Japan. The Shinto shrines also follow some kind of hierarchy. So, in this specific information, it implies that Japanese are very much inclined with their religion, which is the Shinto. Okay, imagine the number of shrines that they have in the whole Japan, in the whole country. So they're very particular with worshiping their deities. So Shinto shrines also have levels. They also have hierarchy. So they have levels in terms of the the deities that they worship. Of the thousands of shrines in Japan today, 40 are considered most important as these are related to the imperial family. Following the hierarchy are 100 of the most popular shrines. The last in the hierarchy are the shrines in the provinces and regions. A sectarian Shinto or Kyoha The sectarian Shinto is also called religious Shinto. It includes the 13 groups which were thought of as the chosen ones to purify Shintoists and the Japanese people. So they remained separated from a national faith movement for various reasons. One of them is to restore pure worship of the kami. Next, we have the Shamanic Shinto or Minkan Shinku. This form of Shinto expression deals with shamans, spirit phenomena, and faith healing. Shamanic Shinto reflects the oldest form of indigenous religion of Japan. Its origins can be traced back to the time before kami were housed in shrines. Next is the dual Shinto or Ryobu Shinto. There are two kinds of Shinto under this category. The first is called Ryobu Shinto, a mixture of Buddhism and Shinto in which the Buddhas were identified with the kami. Okay, the integration and assimilation of these two religions were encouraged during the shogunate period in the 1600s. So you can see the influence of Buddhism in Shintoism. The second kind is called the philosophical Shinto, as it is interested in speculative thinking and conjecture. So, aside from Buddhism, other religions such as Confucianism, Taoism, and Christianity were assimilated into Shinto, and merging of ideas and religious belief resulted in Shinto syncretism. So, nagkaroon ng philosophical aspects in Shinto because of the influence of other religions. And the Kojiki creation story. The Japanese creation story is a myth that details the creation of the celestial and earthly worlds, the birth of the first gods, and the birth of the Japanese archipelago. The story is described at the beginning of the Kojiki, the first book written in Japan. The Kojiki creation story relates the activities of Izanagi and Izanami, a god and goddess who created the Japanese islands out of chaos, a state of disorder or formlessness. Shintoism recognizes both a male and a female principle or element in creation. The Kojiki creation story lays out a thread found throughout Japanese literature. The harmonious, blissful life Izanagi and Izanami shared could not last. The tragic death of Izanami presents sorrow to what was a happy story. Japanese literature enjoys balancing happiness with sorrow. The story is completed by tragedy. Happiness cannot be understood without sorrow. Only few stories end happily ever after, but this reveals a clear-eyed view of reality. Okay, if you are fond of watching Japanese anime, um, like uh, hmm, the Ghibli Studios films or Weathering with You film or any Japanese films, Japanese animated films, um, uh, you can you can observe that the atmosphere of these films have combinations of um, melancholic emotions and happiness at the same time. So the Kojiki creation story has influence in terms of writing these stories that you can watch in Japanese animated films. So that is just one of the influences of Kojiki creation story in the Japanese literature. Then let's proceed to the basic teachings of Shinto, or ancestor worship and kami. The term kami denotes two important descriptive meanings. First, it is used as a noun, which, if translated, means divine beings or gods. Second, if it is used as an adjective, it points to a religious quality such as divine, sacred, and holy. Okay, the first meaning points to their having anthropomorphic or human-like attributes, while the second meaning points to them not as beings but as powers of forces that can be found anywhere, for example in nature. So with these perspectives, one wonders how to resolve the vagueness that the term implies. So medyo vague tong term na kami. The concept of kami may be difficult to grasp owing to English translation and to differences between Japanese and Western culture. So in Shinto, ritual practices are effective ways of showing the deity's respect, praise, reverence, and trust. In this level of understanding the kami, the term is being used in its first sense. Why do Japanese people worship their dead ancestors? Japanese people believe that their dead ancestors joined the kami and hence are worthy of worship. This view is most probably influenced by the spread of Confucianism and Taoism in Japan. So remember, in Confucianism and Taoism, they're particular with ancestor worship. So it's the same with Shintoism. Their influence is evident. So they also worship their ancestors because they believe that the spirits of their ancestors will join to the kami, and hence uh, they will become also spirits worthy of their worship. The second meaning of the term points to equality. One of the qualities of the kami is being divine. However, it does not imply an object. Rather, it simply describes that kami is divine. So meaning kami is sacred. The Japanese equivalent to the word divine is kanagara. The term refers to nature, the sum total of all things that it acts divinely. In this sense, nature is considered the kami as well. So remember, as what I've mentioned earlier, it also Shintoism is also animistic and naturalistic, meaning they believe that there are spirits who dwell in nature. So they also believe that there are spirits in nature that they worship. Ancestor worship has a dual purpose. First is to continue paying the departed reverence, obedience, and respect. Second, while one worships and pays tribute to the kami and ancestors, petitions through sacrifices or offering of gifts and prayers are asked of their ancestors so that interventions are obtained immediately. So, um, worshiping their ancestors has two purposes. First is to pay homage, to pay respect to them. Second is to pay tribute in order to make divine intervention in their situations or in their journey. Another quality of the kami is purity or harai. Purification is required during the oharai no kotaba, before one worships the kami. The kami themselves are believed to be pure, so one has to be purified before presenting himself or herself to the kami. So when they worship their ancestors or the kami, they need to be purified first. So they need to be sanctified. Another quality of the kami is harmony or wa. Harmony is one of the central notions in Shinto because this principle is essential in Shinto ethics and in forming a social or communal identity. So they also believe that they need to be friendly with other people, which means that they need to have harmonious relationship with other people. Finally, another quality of the kami is being the heavenly ruler or tenno. Shinto believes in the divine rule. This is connected with the emperor worship among Shinto adherents. Emperor worship is believed to have been based on the story of the sun goddess Amaterasu, who chose her descendant to rule Earth. So they believe that um, worshipping Kami is also worshipping the emperor. So remember, there's the hierarchy in Shintoism in terms of the kami spirits. So they believe that spirits of the emperor are in the higher level. So that's why they pay more high regard, or they pay higher regard to uh, to the emperors. And Shinto today. Today, Shinto remains alive despite the gradual conversion of its adherents to other religions. However, as long as there are millions of Japanese throughout the world, Shinto will flourish. With the advent of advanced technology and globalization, Shinto has a role to play in facing pressing world issues. So, Shinto, as both a cultural artifact and a religious worldview, can be means to address issues such as maritime disputes, imperialism, and economic exploitation. For instance, Shinto recognizes that respect those claims in maritime disputes are legitimate, valid, and legal. So, since Shinto has influence in the political and government system in Japanese, meaning uh, they pay high regard to the teachings in Shinto or their beliefs in Shinto, the influential when making decisions in terms of the politics and government. Hmm. Meanwhile, Japan has already gained much from her imperialist past. Shinto neither tolerates subjugation, oppression, and alienation of people, nor the exploitation of natural resources, as these are parts of the natural world. So um, Japan wanted to preserve their culture because their culture is deeply associated with Shintoism, and they're very protective when it comes to their natural resources, since they believe that spirits of the kami dwell in these uh, objects sa environment or nature nila. Until today, the issue whether Shinto can be considered a world religion or simply a local or ethnic one has been met with a lot of Western speculation. So, one of the challenges on the universalizing status of Shinto has something to do with written code and systematic doctrinal teachings. Shinto has no theory of infallibility, meaning being absolutely true or certain, unlike other religions. It has no written code or sacred scriptures, only sacred books where Shinto has based its ethnical norms and codes. And above all, Shinto remains a primitive religion in light of the standards of Japan's cultural evolution. And let's talk about the Confucianism, Shintoism, and Taoism. Comparative analysis of Confucianism, Daoism or Taoism, and Shinto. Okay, Daoism and Taoism are the same. They're just used differently. Okay, Jino or Shotoki. It means origin. The three Daoic religions, Confucianism, Taoism, and Shinto, all originate from East Asia. Thus, they are also called East Asian religions. Confucianism and Taoism both carved from China during the Warring States period or the Zhou dynasty, while Shinto, which is also regarded as an indigenous religion, thus it is hard to trace its origins, carved from Japan. From Japan. Okay, the origin. Confucianism may have started during the time of Kung Fuzi, but his ideas became popular only after his death, with the initiatives of Mingji and later of Shungji, who were among those who contributed their own ideas to Confucianism about concepts such as human nature, morality, politics, and government. However, it was not until the reign of the Han Dynasty during the 3rd century BCE that Confucianism secured a very significant place in Chinese society, with the initiative of Dong Zhongshu. Confucianism was adopted by the Han Dynasty as an instrument for its political legitimacy. Just like Confucianism, Taoism also started in China at almost the same period when Confucianism developed. Like Confucianism, it was also meant to offer solutions to China's social upheavals during the time. Lao Tzu, who is considered as Taoism's prominent philosopher, authored Taoism's sacred scripture, the Tao Te Ching, believed by some as a reaction to Confucianism. While Confucianism became extremely relevant in Chinese society when it was adopted by the Han Dynasty, Taoism's importance began upon the collection of writings of unknown origin during the 3rd or 4th centuries BCE. Shinto, which originated from Japan, is considered an animistic folk religion and its origin is hard to trace. But what is clear is that it started as an indigenous religion with utmost importance given to spirits or kami in nature. Next is the morality. In Confucianism, the concept of morality is based on loyalty to one's superiors and elders, parents, and respect for others. Loyalty is also translated as regard for others or zhong, specifically loyalty to one's superior, but also includes respect to one's equals and subordinates. The importance of self-reflection is also emphasized, with the golden rule as the guiding principle. Do not do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. While Confucianism had very few moral guidelines, Taoism initially advocated the idea that society should not be regulated with morality, but should be allowed to exist according to the natural laws. Unlike other religions, Shinto morality is not based on definite standards of right and wrong. Since Shinto is focused on following the will of the kami or spirits, anything that is not in accordance with the will of the kami is considered bad. When it comes to purpose, the three Daoic religions basically share the same view regarding the purpose of existence. Confucianism and Taoism both espouse the importance of self-cultivation for the benefit of all, while Shinto emphasizes the need to return to the original state of nature by observing purity in everyday life. Confucianism advocates the idea that the ultimate goal of everyone should be to reach one's highest potential as a person, and this can be achieved through self-cultivation. As for Taoism, the purpose of existence is to ensure that order and harmony are maintained by being aligned with nature. Thus, like in Confucianism, self-cultivation is also needed because it is the only way to return to the natural state of existence. Shinto shares with Taoism the belief that the natural state of existence should be maintained, while Taoism and Confucianism both emphasize the importance of self-cultivation to achieve this goal. Shinto emphasizes the importance of purification rituals to maintain the natural state of existence. Destiny. For Confucianism, reality has two spheres, the inner sphere and the outer sphere. Destiny or Ming is considered the outer reality which is outside the control and concern of people. Among all Daoic religions, Taoism is often criticized for espousing a fatalistic attitude in life, with emphasis on Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or non-action. Shinto advocates the idea that every person has a destiny to follow, a mission to fulfill which will make one's life worthwhile. However, not everyone is able to realize his or her destiny or mission, for it is impossible to discover destiny when one has lost natural purity. For views on women, among the three Taoic religions, Taoism can be considered as having the most positive view of women. with its emphasis on the significance of balancing the masculine and feminine qualities in every individual to achieve harmony not only of the body but the world as well. Confucianism emphasized hierarchy, and in that hierarchy, women are expected to become subservient to men. Similarly, in Shinto, men are placed at a more advantageous position in society than women. And that's the end of the discussion.